Joy and I met in 2003. I know it sounds very cliche, right? But it was kind of love at first sight. We had a big group of friends that would go country two-step dancing on Thursday nights. So we loved to dance together, and she worked for a company where she was on stage. I'm a little more shy. This is very uncomfortable for me. So I think it's that opposites attract that you always hear about. I think it's a little bit of that. So we did our own commitment ceremony in 2009, and when it was legal to get married, it was really important for us to do that for our family. It made me feel like I could complete my family in the same way that my straight friends were able to. I mean, honestly, I haven't looked back. We've been together for 18 years, so. So much of my life since I first came out, which was in my 20s, has been about hiding and being afraid, and I think it's a personal thing about wanting to feel equal. It's a couple, a family thing, wanting to feel like I'm just as much a person as you are, even though I love another woman. And it's also important for my kids. I want them to feel like their family isn't inferior or isn't, not as good because they have two moms instead of a mom and a dad. Before I was out at work, I felt like I was always holding my breath. That's the only way I can describe it. It's I felt like I was walking through my day hoping I didn't give a hint of myself away, and that people would just see me as who I am at work, in this context of my career. The first time that I came out at work was when I had a one-on-one introduction with a new supervisor, and he's sharing personal things about, I have a wife, I have a son, and I completely clammed up, and I didn't share anything, nothing, through the whole time. And he leaves, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? I kept feeling it. It was on the bubble of just pouring out of me. And so I called him, and I'm like, can we do our one-on-one over? And I said, I'm gay. And it's the first time in my whole career, ever before that, and even since then, that I've actually said to somebody that I worked with, I'm gay. And he was like, I have gay friends, I live in Midtown, our neighbors are gay. He's like, I don't care. As long as you're happy, I don't care who you love. That's my real coming out story at GP, really in my whole work career, and it couldn't have gone better. From that point forward, I stopped hiding. I just stopped not talking about my family and started talking about my family. It's one of those experiences that I'll always remember and will always stick with me. I think it could hopefully help a lot of people just to hear my story and to know that, we work for a company who this is important to. Inclusion is important. Being able to be your true, authentic self is important. And so I really felt like it was important to do this, to let other people know that may not know that, that it's something we stand for as GP.
That was Supply Chain Vice President Amy Rooks. Thank you for sharing your story. At Georgia Pacific, we celebrate the uniqueness of each individual and believe it is disrespectful to judge a person, positively or negatively, based on a group identity. Characteristics such as heritage, gender, and many others often inform an individual's experience and perspectives and can help them create value. But no single characteristic should be used to define another person. Georgia Pacific presents the Starting the Conversation series as a way to engage employees in learning about social issues and different points of view. Today, we will focus on pride in the workplace. We had the chance to ask recruiting manager Brian Bateman about creating inclusive environments in the workplace. This is what we learned. Let's start with how you began creating an inclusive environment within Georgia Pacific.
So for me, the first step was kind of getting to this, getting to the space where I said, hey, yeah, I'm going to accept what everything tells me, which is that gender is not necessarily exclusively male or female. And then secondarily, if I can do something that simple that's going to let the candidates that I interact with or the coworkers that I interact with that are transgender know that I'm not going to make different assumptions about them simply because they're transgender, if I can do that, something that easy to make it more inclusive, then I'm willing to do that.
We noticed the increased visibility of pronouns. Please explain why this is important in the work environment.
The easiest way you could communicate to transgender, candidates or employees that you won't make assumptions about their gender just by saying, hey, I'm going to identify my pronouns. I'm also not going to make assumptions about you.
What are the first steps to making sure members of the LGBTQ+ community feel included while at work?
We have to create an environment where people will feel comfortable to come forward and say and be their authentic selves, right? That's our responsibility as leaders in the organization.
What can supervisors and hiring managers do to ensure members of the LGBTQ+ community feel seen and heard during the interview process and ultimately on the job?
Just take the person for who they are and focus on their ability to contribute and not on any factors outside of that, right? That's what it all comes down to, is that we be open to having conversations, right? If someone wants to disclose that they're trans or gay in the interview process, well then that's fine. Let's treat that just like we would any other disclosure if somebody's talking to us about a heterosexual relationship, right? Their spouse and their kids in that space. But take the person at their merit and what they bring to the table and how they can contribute. Focus on that contribution mindset that people have, and not on any of those factors that really ultimately at the end of the day don't have anything to do with whether or not they can be successful in a role.
What is the most important step in creating inclusive environments in the workplace?
You can't be afraid to have that conversation. Yes, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and that's okay. If you get it wrong, somebody will correct you. And if you're a supervisor and somebody on your team gets it wrong and misgenders someone or says something incorrect about the LGBTQ community, just correct it in a kind way, but just continue the conversation. That's the important part, is just to keep it going.
We also had the chance to learn about Owen Taylor, HR generalist, and his transition while working for Georgia Pacific.
Started with the company in August of 2013. It started with me just grabbing the bull by the horns because I had just received one of the best pieces of information in my life, that I was approved for hormones. So I grabbed my union representative, right, the union president. I grabbed my HR manager. I grabbed the plant director. I grabbed a friend for support because I knew somebody at work who also had an LGBTQIA family member who was in my corner. So grabbing my own safety blanket, right? And we walked into the room, and I sat them all down and I said, I have great news. Great news. I just got approved for hormones. And the whole room went, okay. Not sure what that meant, right? So then it comes the next, and we're happy. Okay, good. This is good stuff, right? We're smiling. Everything's great. So then came the conversation of, and I would prefer if you would call me Owen, and my pronouns he, his, him. And they said, okay. All right, so working out there on the floor, now the next big hurdle is telling my coworkers, because they were gonna see visible changes on me. I mean, again, this face didn't happen overnight, but I was all about it. So, and they were gonna see it. They were gonna see the whole process, right? And fortunately for me, it didn't take too long. But I let them know. I pulled them aside, and the way that I took the bull by the horns with them was, I have great news. Right? And then they were like, okay. So then it was, and this is good. And I'm like, yes, this is good, you guys. This is wonderful. I get to live my true, authentic self here with you. I had a supervisor who was on vacation when I went through, approaching the supervisor team and said, hey, this is what I'm going through. And he pulled me into his office, and I thought something was wrong. And he said, tell me everything. And we just took a breath together and talked it out and said, this is what's going to happen, right? This is my new life. So we made accommodations. We changed my name on the schedule. You know, my email address was owen.taylor. I didn't have to worry about, you know, anything awkward. You know, it was wonderful. I'm incredibly blessed. I mean, were there things that we probably could have done better along the way? Sure. But it's a growing process. Everybody goes through it. So I'm going to go back to my original statement. It was like holding your breath, right? But I'm grateful for this company and everything that they had done to make me feel like a human being, because it could have gone the other direction.
Thank you, Owen. We hope you were able to understand the importance of Georgia Pacific being stewards of an inclusive environment for our employees who are members of the LGBTQ+ community. Supporting coworkers and respecting their preferred pronouns is just the beginning of creating an inclusive environment for all.